Hi everyone and welcome back. A number of you have asked me to comment on a whole bunch of videos of Yuval Noah Harari. One of the marks in my mind of a great writer or thinker is that even when you don't agree with him, you just love reading and love hearing what they say and the way they put it. And he is right at the top of this list. So in this video, he was actually in a conversation with actress Natalie Portman, and the moderator asked them to discuss what was good or bad about religion, past and present or future. And we're going to be looking at this and analysing some of his comments, and I'll be putting forward my views on them.
Have religions in general had a positive or negative impact on humanity? Score it 1 to 5, where 1 is very bad and 5 is very good. Well, so both of you have to answer this one.
First of all, I think before we even get into the answers they give, it's really, that laugh says something. We know it doesn't matter who the audience is or what forum this is given in, whoever's going to sit in that audience is going to think religion is very bad and going to be wanting people to say that. And that is because there is a certain element of society that's very dominant in this sort of thing that really just takes it for granted that religion is obviously very bad, you know. Let's see how he responds.
I don't know, 2. I mean, it's done some good, definitely. I don't think that, it's all bad. A lot of the morality of humanity, of art, of the ability to make people trust one another and cooperate is due to the various religions, but they've also done a tremendous amount of harm, and certainly not all religions are the same in terms of the amount of good and the amount of harm that they have done.
So first of all, I think that's a really important and really good introductory point, because the word religion is so broad and sometimes also so narrow at the same time. It's so broad because it encompasses over 500 different mainstream thought systems and behavioral systems. And you just lump them all together is so ridiculous. I'll think of a terrorist somewhere who kills in the name of a particular radical strand of a particular religion and say, oh my goodness, you know, all 500 or so thought systems are wrong. And you can name religions with millions of followers where you will just not have heard of a single terrorist act done in their name, which doesn't mean it's never been done, but it's very rare. So one of the points Harari makes is he agrees, which not everybody does, that religion has done a lot of good in the past, but questions the value of, do we still need it nowadays? So let's just focus for a moment on some of the things that religions gave us in the past. You see, humans, early societies seem to have a basic sense of cooperation within small clans, 60 to 100 people, like hunter-gatherer societies all over the world. It's when we start to move into larger populations that things become very hierarchical. From about, let's say, 5,500 years ago, the big city-states, very power-oriented, quite militaristic, oppression of people starts to become very, very clear. As we start to see writing or fossil record, you start to see lots of child burials and infanticide practiced. Militarism starts to become an ideal as opposed to peace. Education starts to be repressed. And even when alphabets come out and every child could learn, only tiny elites are given that. Social responsibility, the way we relate today, seems to disappear. And religions play a very central role in, specifically, in the West, certainly monotheistic religions played an enormous role in reversing all of this and giving us the values that we take as universal today. I think in other videos we cover that in greater detail, and there's a lot of literature on it, and a lot of people don't appreciate that, the extent to which it was thanks to those religions that the value of infanticide, it became, how can you kill children? Whereas Aristotle thought it was okay if they're disabled or whatever, or that peace becomes an abstract ideal, or social responsibility becomes the core way we can judge a society, or education, at least the theory that it should be given to everybody, which takes many centuries till it manifests, and all these types of values. And Judaism, we can be proud, played a very central role in initiating many of these ideas and propagating them. I'm not sure Harari would necessarily analyze all of that. He doesn't discuss, even in his writings, the extent to which religion played such a pivotal and radically transformative role in shaping the values and structures of thought of humanity, particularly, by the way, in abstracting moral thinking beyond the small clan, a point I'm going to come back to later. But either way, he says, yes, it did do some good, but we don't need it now. Why don't we need it now? That's the bit we're going to turn to next.
But ultimately, both in the past and also today, I don't think they are really necessary for morality or for trust or for cooperation. In the end, morality is about reducing suffering in the world. You don't need to believe in this God or that God in order to act morally. You need to have a deep appreciation of suffering.
So Harari's argument is you don't need religion for morality, because the essence of morality is compassion, is care for the suffering and the desire to see suffering gone. Now, I think that is a very small but important part of moral behavior, but actually very small when we deal with the societies we're in today. And there was actually a study done in 2012 by a whole team of psychologists that was titled My Brother's Keeper. And its argument was, and the way it was put out there in the wide press, it was a bunch of professors in California and researchers in California who concluded that religious people are less motivated by empathy and compassion than less believing people. People who are less believing, more atheistic, are more motivated by compassion and empathy than people who are religious, who are supposed to live by the dictum of love your neighbor like yourself and things like that. Wow, sounds like, oh my goodness, these religious people are just cold or motivated by, they don't want to go to hell and so they give charity. But people who let go of religion have these beautiful compassion and empathy. That's what it sounds like. And that's, by the way, how a lot of reports in the media put forward the study at the time. Now, if you actually look at the study inside, what you'll see is that's not what's going on. The study actually reaffirms what numerous studies do, that when you factor across the world, it doesn't matter which country you're in, everything that's extraneous to this, whether it's race or gender or income group or whatever it is, you look, just kind of isolate single factors. The single biggest factor that determines what people give, how much do they give, what percentage of their income, time, volunteering, is actually religion. Their level of religion massively shifts the amount of giving that they do. On average, of course, there's plenty of stingy and horrible religious people and plenty of incredibly generous atheistic people. But on average, across a society, religion and the commitment to that religion plays the biggest single factor in determining the amount of giving of any sort that a person does. And this study reaffirms that. What it shows, however, is that if you show an atheist or somebody who's less religious who naturally gives less, you show them a kid crying, then they start to close the gap. They come much closer to the religious person. The religious person is giving it doesn't go up that much more. Now, what that really means is this. You see, the empathy drive, the kid crying, is the primitive moral instinct. It's why people are good in a clan of 60 to 100 people, because you know everybody personally, and your empathy drive is very primitive, very powerful, very overwhelming, and it won't let you see injustice and harm go. But the minute you go to larger numbers, and now the person's not crying in front of you, that primitive moral thing isn't screaming at you anymore. You read about somebody suffering somewhere. Okay, as long as not in too much detail, you can move on. And at that point, the non-believer's giving drops massively. Put the crying child in front of them, the primitive drive goes, oh, got to, boom, up they come again. Let it go, down they go and carry on like normal. The religious person seems to live at and above that level all the time. They don't need the crying child in front of them to be givers. Somehow the value of their faith does it for them. Now, why that exactly is, and is it the same across all religions and all this kind of stuff, that can be studied. I personally think it's because when you live in a world and you believe, there's a single creator of the universe who loves all of creation, and that you're in this world to emulate that creator and to care about the creator's world and to give to others, it creates a whole different attitude to everything. If you have money, you know it's not yours. It's part of what you're given as a gift to give to the wider world. That's a very motivating attitude to constant flow of goodness. When you don't have that, ultimately you're a self-centered being who may get pleasure out of giving or may get pleasure out of keeping most of it. Put the crying child, the brain goes crazy, I become a giver. Take the crying child away, the brain relaxes again, and I worry about myself. So I'm not saying all atheists don't give charity. I know some really generous and charitable atheists. I know some very non-generous believers. But you look at effects across all of society, and we need that type of religious instinct. We need that to be in the world, at least that aspect of a loving, unifying force that and a meaning and purpose to everything I have being to give to others. and that defines me and part of my role in this world, or some substitute for that, which hasn't yet been found and probably couldn't be found if you pull the idea of a meaning, purposeful creator out of all of this. But let's just go to the very last point where he makes one other point that I want to comment on.
I mean, in the past, religion, it determined agriculture and medicine. If you are sick, you go to the priests. If there is no rain, you go to the temple to pray.
So I think a slight important point over here. I actually think, you take Jewish literature as an example, and I'm pretty sure it's the same across all cultures and religions. When you were sick, you went to a doctor thousands of years ago too. Doctors are not a new invention. They are far more capable nowadays. But the idea that religion played the role in healing people, I don't think was exclusive back then, and I don't think it's not exclusive now. I know that when somebody's ill now, I'll pray for them, and of course we'll tell them to go and see a doctor, and that you'd have done 2,000 years ago too. But let's get to the main point he's making.
And all these things have been taken over by science and technology and the engineers and the doctors. And what is left is really defining collective identities for human groups. And in this, religion is now mostly harmful, I think, because instead of encouraging global unity, the main thing it does at present is to support tribalism and nationalism and prevent greater human collaboration.
So that's now a really important point, right? Does religion now, by creating this tribalism, create more disunity than unity? By the way, the tribalism creates an enormous amount of unity too, because people in countries across the world, thousands of miles away from each other, millions of people can feel connected to one another, but does it create the them and us? And I think the answer is certain religious things do. I think really good religion doesn't, or at least in the sense creates the group for the sake of being able to give something to the wider world. But there are certainly strands within religions and interpretations within religions that do create this them and us. They're the bad guys, we're the good guys. But I actually think that doesn't come from religion. Remember the earlier argument that some people say, well, morality doesn't come from religion. It could just come from natural empathy and so on. And we saw that really doesn't work. Ancient societies didn't come up with our values. And the empathy instinct is very restricted to small groups of people. It doesn't abstract itself without religion to much larger groups. But here, the converse, I think, actually is true. The bad tribalism doesn't need religion. You take religion away tomorrow, you'll have exactly the same amount of tribalism. One of the proofs is when Europe secularized, and instead of religion, there was nationalism. It was as tribal, as vicious as before. And then when it split into ideologies and philosophies, communism and liberalism, it was as vicious and as them and us, good and evil. And look at modern world today. America, politics, which has also become ideal once again, is now very, very much, we're the good guys, you're the bad guys. Democrats are good, Republicans are evil. Republicans are good, Democrats are evil. Tribal instinct is so powerful within humans that it shapes the way lots of people interpret their religions. And it shapes the way they interpret whatever they put instead of religions. And you will find plenty of humans who transcend the tribalism, but lots and lots of humans who get stuck in it. Look how even sports games can lead to violence, for goodness sakes, right? So I agree that when that tribal virus takes over a religion, it can actually be quite dangerous, because you've now got a God excuse in there to really be violent to somebody else. But the truth is, history of humanity showed us you take a religion away from people, what they replace it with within a relatively short period of time can become as violent, as dangerous. Somebody once wrote that nobody does suicide bombing in the name of no God. That's just not true. Robert Paper, there's a sociologist who actually showed that, wrote a book, Dying to Win, where he showed how many suicide bombings there were in the name of atheistic communism, right? You don't need religion to do terrible evil. You don't need religion to be deeply tribal. What we do need in the religious world is to use religion to transcend that tribalism. That, I think, is a fair point. And to me, one of the beautiful things in the Torah is the shift in the use of the word as the Jews kind of migrate, as Israel migrates out of Egypt and is about to enter the land, the shift from the word shevet, which is the Hebrew word to describe the tribes, the Israelites were 12 tribes, to mateh. And somebody pointed out that shevet and mateh, both Hebrew words for tribes or groups of people, they're also words for sticks. But like in English, we have the word club and the word staff, which are both groups of people and both sticks. But the club hits people and a club is exclusive. And a staff supports people, and a staff is a group that works together and develops their identity for the sake of giving to others. And we need more staffs. We need faith groups to see themselves that way, to build their own beautiful identities, but seeing part of the mission as how we then become a blessing for everybody else. So in summary, I think he as many intellectuals in the world today, very much overplay the amount of bad that was done in the name of religion, underplay the amount of good that was done in the name of religion, and don't always realize the extent to which the world needs it to this day. I think there's some points in there that I really strongly agree with, and I love in general the way he puts things, but in particular the way he put things about the distinguishing. Not all religions should be lumped together about the amount of good they do or bad they do, and within religions not all sects should get the same level of credit for that. But in terms of understanding the value that religion played and certain specific religions in particular played in shaping the way that we think about the world, creating our moral landscape way beyond our instincts, and to this day creating givers way beyond the primitive empathy drive. For that, faith is central. We need to look out for being taken over by the tribal instinct and deifying, defining others, is evil and justifying violence. That's very dangerous. But the good that is done when faith is done well, the good that is done when we tap into the idea of one infinite source, one loving source that loves all of humanity and asks us to care for all of humanity, the good that is done there is so unparalleled that the world needs more of good religion, not less. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, and click on that little bell. And feel free to comment. And especially if there's any videos you'd like me to talk about, feel free to put it in the chat below, or reach out to us on any of our social media forums and let us know. Thanks so much.